So what would you do if you lost $1 million? Today, we're going to unpack an incredible story that's part financial thriller, part psychological deep dive. It's all based on the hard-won lessons from the book, What I Learned Losing $1 Million.
Let's just start with the number that kicks this whole thing off. $1.6 million. Gone. That is the kind of loss that can absolutely destroy a career. And believe me, it almost did. A number that big? Well, it needs an explanation. And that's the real puzzle here, isn't it? I mean, this wasn't some rookie making a silly mistake. This was an expert trader at the absolute peak of his game. It really makes you wonder, how does someone so successful fail so spectacularly? And we're getting the story straight from the source. This is the cautionary tale told by Jim Paul himself, along with Brendan Moynihan. It's a really powerful story about money, about ego, and about the incredibly dangerous stories we tell ourselves.
You know, to really understand the fall, you first have to appreciate the climb. Jim Paul's story is a classic American dream kind of tale. He wasn't born with a silver spoon. He clawed his way to the top.
And his journey was just pure hustle. It started when he was just 9 years old, caddying, learning about money from the ground up. Through his teenage years, he was juggling multiple jobs, building this incredible work ethic. He went on to university, then officer candidate school, and eventually he reached the absolute top. Governor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. I mean, by any measure, this guy had made it. And of course, with that kind of success came the high-flying lifestyle, but also something way more dangerous. This deep-seated belief that he was special. He didn't just think he was good at his job. He truly believed the normal rules of the game just didn't apply to him. And that right there is where the trouble starts.
So, with a track record like that, how on earth did it all go so wrong? This is the moment the perfect picture begins to crack. This is the unraveling.
And here it is. This is the core lesson of the entire book. His massive, catastrophic loss didn't happen because his market analysis was off or his data was bad. The problem wasn't external, it was internal. The fatal flaw, it was all in his head.
Okay, so this brings us to the most important part of this whole thing, the psychology of loss. We're going to deconstruct exactly what was going on in his mind that led him straight to financial disaster.
The book makes this brilliant point. There are a million different ways to make money, right? But losing big money, well, that often follows a very predictable, psychologically driven pattern. People tend to lose it all for the same handful of reasons, and they're all tied to these emotional and psychological traps.
And according to the book, this psychological spiral follows 4 predictable stages. First, you make a bad decision. Hey, it happens to everyone. But then comes the critical mistake. You refuse to admit you were wrong. That denial then leads you to double down, to throw good money after bad, until finally, you're left with a catastrophe that was totally avoidable from the start.
So why? Why refuse to admit you're wrong? It's because we get 2 very different types of loss confused. First, there's the external loss, the actual dollars and cents. That's just a math problem, right? Something you can manage. But then there's the internal loss, the blow to your ego. That loss feels personal. It feels like you are a failure. And that is what people will fight tooth and nail to avoid admitting.
For Jim Paul, his big internal enemy had a name, hubris. And this isn't just regular confidence. No, this is a dangerous, toxic overconfidence. It's that deep-down conviction that you're special, that you're the exception to every rule.
We've all heard that voice in our heads, right? That little whisper that tells you, against all the evidence, no, this time is different. I'm right, and the entire market is wrong. For Jim Paul, his long history of being right made that voice incredibly loud and persuasive. And he listened to it, and it led him right off a cliff.
All right, so after looking at the incredible rise, the devastating fall, and the psychology behind it all, we finally get to the most powerful lesson in this whole story.
So when you boil it all down, after the market analysis, the risks, all those psychological traps, who is really your biggest financial enemy?
Yep, it's the person looking back at you in the mirror. Your biggest financial threat is your own ego, your pride, your fear. According to Jim Paul, mastering the market isn't the real game. The real challenge is mastering yourself.
And that leaves us with a really tough question to think about. We all have our own version of this struggle. So what's the one emotional mistake, that one internal habit, that you see yourself making over and over again? And maybe more importantly, what's it costing you? Now that is the million-dollar question.